cemetery, horror stories, and mystical stories. Cemetery is a section of territory specifically intended for the burial of the dead or their ashes after cremation. There are many mystical stories, scary stories, legends, and horror stories associated with this place. Some are pure fiction and are intended to scare children at night, but many stories are taken from real life or are based on real events and are shrouded in terrible secrets that will make the blood run cold. This section contains a wide variety of cases related to the cemetery. Read and enjoy. One story's two friends and a lost soul. Two friends lived in the same city, Paulina and Diana. The girls were friends from the first grade. They graduated from school in the same institute together. Diana and Paulina were inseparable. Both are so sociable and funny. But one day, Diana became seriously ill with tuberculosis. She lay in bed at home for many days and coughed heavily. B blood. Paulina was terribly worried about her best friend. I visited her for weeks and prayed that Diana would recover quickly. But this did not happen. One fine day, February 19, Diana died. Heartbroken, Paulina fell into depression and did not go to her friend's funeral. Paulina sat in her room, looking out the window at the large multi-story buildings of her city, and was terribly bored. From time to time, the girl looked at her old school photo of her and her friend graduating from 5th grade. But that was so long ago, back in May 1992. 10 years later, Paulina came to the cemetery. The girl stood with an artificial bouquet of flowers. Paulina was all pale. She stood silently at the grave of her former friend Diana, and bitter tears flowed from Paulina's eyes. Suddenly, Paulina turned her head and saw a girl very familiar to her at the neighbor's grave. Paulina put artificial flowers at her friend's grave and wanted to ask the stranger something, but the girl froze in horror. The stranger was wearing Paulina's friend's coat, and her hair was the same as Diana's, and she had a sweater and boots and jeans. The stranger, seeing Paulina, ran up to her and wanted to hug her, but a small fight broke out. "Girl, I don't know you. Who are you anyway?" Paulina was indignant, pushing away the stranger dressed as a friend. "Paulina, don't you remember me? It's me, Diana." The unfamiliar girl exclaimed, and suddenly, with a careless and absurd push, the stranger pushed Paulina away from her. The girl tripped over a stone, tearing her leg. "Ah!" Paulina shouted and felt her skull pierced by the metal peak of the fence made near Diana's grave. Paulina fell silent. Her skull was bleeding and pouring out blood. Her head was pierced right through, leaving red visible marks. Paulina's sweet green eyes closed, and a fresh red drop poured out of her mouth onto the pure white snow, spreading across the snow in a neat path. "We'll see each other soon, Polinochka," said the unfamiliar girl, leaning on the tombstone of her former friend. "See you, dear one, in the next world." The stranger disappeared into thin air, hiding behind an old birch tree. It is unknown who she is and why she killed Paulina. Maybe it was a ghost or someone else. I can't imagine. 17 days later, behind Diana's grave, only hers grew up, Paulina's grave. Apparently the girls, as someone said, we met in the next world. A few days ago, young people passing by saw the dead body of a girl, and already on the 3rd day, Paulina rested in peace. Voznesenskaya Paulina Pavlovna, this is her full name, died on January 3, 2021. Billions of souls flock to her grave at night, hoping to look at a new person in the cemetery. They say that if you come to Izhevsk and find that very cemetery, you can see the transparent ghost of an unfamiliar nameless woman in the attire of Paulina's friend, who stands at Paulina's grave with a candle in her hands and sheds tears, whispering to herself. Two stories: the girl from the foggy cemetery. This creepy and incomprehensible story happened last year, at the beginning of autumn. Then nothing foreshadowed trouble, but it came. She came a little later, but while we were just getting ready for the dacha. We were going to the dacha as we planned to celebrate the birthday of Veronica, who was the wife of my good friend Nikita. Our wives went there earlier in the morning, and we were supposed to arrive closer to lunch, dropping into the warehouse and purchasing some groceries. Actually, that's what we planned to do, and even did it. But then, having left the city, our path ran towards the dacha community, which was located 10 kilometers away. And how about a dacha? It may have been officially listed as such, but in fact, the former dachas have already become a kind of village where people have built houses and mansions for themselves. No one was poking around in the beds. growing tomatoes and potatoes, or maybe just for your own pleasure, in small quantities. The weather, as expected in our south, was hot, despite the time of year. Until now, the beaches were filled with tourists, and cars with someone else's license plates were no longer breathable. It seemed that the city was seething, day and night, tirelessly. "Have we bought everything?" I asked, lighting a cigarette, smoking out the open window of the SUV. "Yeah, I guess," the friend shrugged. At that moment, my wife called, asking if we would arrive soon. I assured that in about 10 minutes we would be there. "The rest of the guests will have to arrive by 4 o'clock, and before that time we need to have time to prepare everything."
"Are you worried?" The comrade grinned.
"They're bored." I threw away the cigarette butt, exposing my face to the hot wind, leaning slightly out of the window. A couple of minutes later, something strange happened. In the south, the weather changes instantly, but not so lightning fast. "What the hell?" Nikita swore. We ourselves did not notice how our car began to drive in thick fog. We don't know where it came from, but it turned out to be so dense that the headlights could not cut through this viscous veil. It seemed as if the light was being absorbed by this substance. I've never seen anything like it. The car stopped and we left the cabin, standing on the cracked asphalt, breathing in the cool, damp air. Having taken a few steps to the side, Nikita suddenly disappeared, swallowed up in the fog with a quiet slurp. "Hey, where are you?" For some time, nothing happened, and after about 30 seconds, my friend appeared, and it must be said that he looked very frightened. "What's happened?" He swore dirty, breathing rapidly, running up to me. "What happened?" I took a few steps to the side and almost immediately saw the cemetery, the friend said in one breath. "Cemetery? What nonsense. It's in a completely different direction, on the way to Priazovka." I know your mother, but this is not our cemetery, not the city one." He tried to pull himself together to calm down a little. "What then? There is simply nothing else here." I have no idea, but it was old, with holes in the fence, and when I looked into one, in the fog I could make out rickety wooden crosses. Damp, blackened by time. There was complete silence, not a single sound, and I stood there like that for a few minutes, and then... "What a few minutes? Why are you bothering me? You were gone for about 30 seconds at most. In a word, no more than a minute. I'm telling you." He wiped his wet lips with the back of his hand and then continued. "Suddenly, between the graves, I noticed some movement. I looked closer and realized that it was a human silhouette that was approaching me. After a couple of moments, I realized that I was looking at a beautiful girl with a pale face and green eyes. Her long dark hair fluttered as if in the wind, although there was complete silence, you can see for yourself. And then, nothing. I rushed back. Where to go back? Yes, to the car. But you weren't there at all." I mentally waved my hand at this, after which I walked around the SUV, cutting across the road, moving in the right direction. "Where are you going? Look at your cemetery and the girl." "Stop. No need. Do not go." But of course I didn't find anything. There was a field by the road, as it should be, which disappeared into the impenetrable fog. "I don't understand anything," Nikita muttered under his breath, who followed me, not wanting to be left alone. There was a cemetery, and this girl too. He squeezed his t-shirt with his fingers, crumpling it in every possible way. "I have no idea. Okay, let's go. Enough for us to stagnate in one place." Plunging back into the car, we moved on, and a few minutes later the fog miraculously dissolved, again giving way to the pleasant southern sun, which caressed the earth with its rays. I swear to you, there was a cemetery and a girl. He tried to convince me once again, beautiful, in a white dress, and through this dress her body was visible. "Did you manage to see something like that in the fog?" "It's just..." The friend hesitated. "Well, what else is there?" In general, she approached me. She poured green into her eyes, and then lightly touched my cheek with her icy fingers. It was as if I had been hit by an electric shock, and I ran away as fast as I could. For some reason, my friend initially kept silent about this detail. Apparently, he did not want to share such personal, in his opinion, details. "Okay, let's forget about it," I asked, not wanting to return to this incomprehensible topic. But we couldn't forget, because when we arrived at the dacha, we didn't find anyone. The house was empty. Our wives disappeared without a trace, as did their belongings. What nonsense. I was indignant, looking at my watch. Only 2, and these bags are no longer there. Guests are due to arrive soon, but absolutely nothing is ready. And as it turned out, a little later we were gone for 2 days. Yes, no matter how incredible it may seem, it was exactly like that. Somehow our short journey out of town was lost in time, lasting just over 48 hours. And then I immediately remembered Nikita's story. I don't know. I think our wives didn't believe us in everything that happened. However, they can be understood. I wouldn't believe all the nonsense we told them either. However, it was absolutely true. I suppose there were some shmaras hanging out, my wife asked me once again, with my friend. And all thanks to Nikita, who during his married life loved to go to the left. His wife caught him for this, but did not divorce him. She probably loved me, or maybe she was just a fool. Didn't understand. Have I ever given you any reason to think that I'm walking around with women? There was absolutely nothing to object to my wife here, since indeed, my family life completely suited me, and I did not seek consolation on the side. History seemed to be slowly beginning to be forgotten, but subsequent events showed that this was not at all the case. Around 10 o'clock in the evening, I received a call on my phone. By that time, I was already getting ready to sleep, but Nikita made me forget about these plans.
Hello?
She's here, was my answer. Who is she? That girl from the cemetery.
The friend spoke in a whisper, as if he was afraid of eavesdropping.
Where's Veronica? What? What else is Veronica? She went to her mother in Krasnodar. I went out onto the lodges so as not to disturb my wife. She was already going to bed and I still continued to chat, causing my wife to cast sidelong glances at me. So what's wrong with this girl? Imagine I found her. More precisely, not so. He lowered his voice even more, babbling. I was driving from the yacht club when I saw a girl in a white dress on the side of the road. I guess I don't have a wife, so why not try my luck? He stopped, called out, and when she turned around. So, what is next? Then she got into my car and I brought her home. To your home? What a fool. Frankly, I didn't even know how to feel about my friend's words. He was talking about the girl from the cemetery whom he met a few weeks ago. It all seemed unreal to me, but now it turns out that she does exist. I have to go. Nikita suddenly abruptly interrupted the conversation. She's calling me. He apparently turned around, saying something incomprehensible to someone in the apartment, which I did not understand, since my friend momentarily covered the receiver with his palm. I don't think it's a good idea to bring some woman into your apartment. I tried to reason with him. I have to go, he repeated. She's calling me. I'm already tired of waiting. Nikita rather exhaled the last word with reverence, as if anticipating something unusual and pleasant that was about to happen soon. No. Wait. But the connection has already been broken. All further attempts to call ended in failure, and then I began to hastily get ready, grabbing the keys to my car and moving out of the apartment. Where are you going? My wife asked in amazement, stroking with gentle movements the back of our Persian cat Shoma, who was bending in every possible way. The main thing was to be caressed. I'll be there soon, I replied. All the way I was worried about my friend. That day I didn't believe his story about the cemetery and the girl, although I myself clearly saw this strange fog and then the gap in time. And now he was rushing through the whole city, wanting to be in time. She came for him, a thought appeared from somewhere in my head. Because Nikita saw her, and that's why she came for him. About 20 minutes later, having reached the place, I jumped out of the salon, and without waiting for the elevator, I literally flew up the stairs to the 7th floor. To my surprise, the door was unlocked. Stepping inside cautiously, I walked quietly through the rooms until I reached the bedroom. There I saw Nikita, who was lying on a double bed with the lights off, his arms spread wide to the sides. His motionless eyes looked into emptiness, and his mouth with blackened lips was distorted in a silent scream. He seemed dried out, like some kind of doll from which all the air had been let out. The apartment smelled strongly of damp earth. I felt moisture, which covered me from head to toe with some kind of invisible film. But after a moment, all these feelings disappeared irrevocably, remaining only in my memory, an eternal imprint of those events.
Having hesitantly taken a few steps towards the dead body, I froze as the smell of damp earth reappeared, growing stronger with each heartbeat. Turning my head feverishly, trying to look for danger, I involuntarily took another step, and out of nowhere fog began to form around me. At first there is a light haze, but then it gets denser and denser, until a kind of airless cocoon is formed.
God, what's going on here? Squinting my eyes, trying to make out the bed with my friend's body, I moved on, wanting to find some landmark. But amazingly, he continued to move forward and forward until the smell of the earth intensified to the point of disgust, and a fence rotten through and through, beyond which a cemetery could be seen, appeared in front of me. Among the wet graves, I could see a silhouette that seemed to be female. God! Animal horror seized me, and I rushed away as fast as I could, turning around, wanting to find myself again in a familiar room, in a familiar environment, albeit with a dead body. There was another smell, the stench of rotten flowers. If only she didn't see me. If only I didn't see it. Where are you going? A soft voice was heard from behind. This is how a tender lover or mother could address her son trying to attract attention. Come to me, honey? After an eternity, but in fact only a minute later, I emerged from the fog, finding myself in the bedroom. And without stopping here, gripped by mortal fear, he rushed as fast as he could out of the apartment, wanting to forget about all this forever. But before that, I collided with Veronica, almost knocking her down. She was just leaving the kitchen, holding a mug of tea in her hands, and Nikita's body disappeared, which I did not immediately pay attention to. "What are you doing here?" she exclaimed in amazement. Perplexed, I shook my head violently, after which I walked around my friend's wife, rushing down the stairs, constantly looking back. Would I see a girl in a white dress? And Veronica shouted something after me. Afterwards, I had to explain for a long time how I ended up in the apartment, 3 days after my friend's body was discovered. Yes, that's how long I was gone that caused my wife to start sounding the alarm when I didn't come home that evening.